Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're looking at something totally different. Look, if you've ever tried to learn a language, you already know the grueling drill, right? Endless flashcards, repetitive apps, and those grammar tables that literally put you straight to sleep. But what if we just threw all of that right out the window? Today, we are exploring an incredibly unconventional approach to language learning. We're going to dive into the core methodology behind a course called Italian Uncovered, and we'll see how it completely flips the script on how we absorb new languages by using a thrilling, story-based method. So, I want you to ask yourself a quick question. What if you could learn Italian by, well, solving a crime? Seriously, imagine trading in those boring grammar drills for an immersive, high-stakes art heist set right in the heart of Florence. No flashcards, just a gripping mystery. You aren't just a student anymore. You literally become an investigator. Let's look at the actual story that makes this whole thing possible. Meet our main guy, Edward Blake. He's a 60-year-old retired detective straight from Scotland Yard. So, following the tragic loss of his Italian wife, Laura, Edward decides to pack up and move to the beautiful Tuscan hills for a quiet life. He really just wants to eat his toast with marmalade, read the daily Italian newspaper, and actually enjoy his retirement. But, well, as you can probably guess, trouble has a funny way of finding a good detective, even when they are entirely off the clock. The inciting incident here is fantastic because it pulls you right into the language immediately. Edward takes a little day trip to the Uffizi gallery in Florence. While he's just sitting there having coffee, a mysterious woman wearing a red hat sits down at his table, asks for directions, and then just abruptly leaves. But she leaves behind a little note that says, "Don't trust anyone in the museum." And get this, almost immediately after Edward walks into the Uffizi, the alarms start blaring. A famous painting has been stolen, and Edward himself is briefly detained by the police as the prime suspect. No way, right? Okay, let's dive into this, because this right here is where the absolute magic happens. Why use a story? Well, traditional learning focuses on memorizing rules in a vacuum. It's dry, it's totally abstract. But reading a real, engaging story, that is exactly how the human brain is naturally built to learn. You're absorbing vocabulary and sentence structures contextually. You're experiencing the language exactly as it's actually used in the real world, all driven by the narrative tension of Edward's crazy predicament. And this really brings us to the core philosophy of the creator's method, which is perfectly captured in this quote right here. If you can follow a mystery, you can learn Italian this way. Now, I know it sounds like a bold claim, right? But the source material notes that 30 years of actual student success literally prove it. When you engage with a gripping narrative, your brain basically stops worrying about perfectly conjugating verbs and just starts trying to figure out who the thief is. The language simply starts to stick on its own. As the story builds, Edward, who just wants to clear his head, honestly, goes down to the coastal city of Livorno. He's craving some authentic fish stew and a nice cold glass of wine. But the mystery totally follows him. He gets another note from that mysterious woman, only now she's calling herself Cassandra. She tells him he needs to go to the old Livorno fish market at exactly 10 p.m. So Edward hides in the shadows and watches as a suspicious black van pulls up, two guys get out, and an elegant black sedan arrives on the scene. The plot thickens, and as a learner, you are right there in the dark alongside him. So how is this thrilling story actually structured into a real course? Well, Italiano Uncovered is broken down into 5 short, highly manageable modules. Each module is built around one gripping chapter of Edward's story. You get full audio support so you can hear that native pronunciation perfectly. You also get English language support, meaning you're never totally lost, and it even includes 4 bonus workbooks to really help solidify everything you've just read. And this part brilliantly illustrates how the grammar is handled. Look, you don't escape grammar entirely, sorry, but it's presented as a helpful tool, not a miserable chore. The course includes these fantastic A2 to B1 grammar cheat sheets. They clearly and beautifully map out everything you're going to need: the present tense, how to use articles, the tricky difference between the 2 past tenses, the passato prossimo for facts and the imperfecto for setting the scene, right on through to the future and conditional tenses. It's just a quick, handy reference that empowers you without completely overwhelming you. Now, let's be real for a second. If you are a focused learner, you probably have a veritable graveyard of abandoned language apps sitting on your phone right now. Trust me, we have all been there. So it is totally natural to ask, will I actually finish this course? Honestly, it's the single biggest doubt language learners have when starting something new. So the crucial point is this. This course is a story you will actually want to finish. That is the entire point of the methodology. You aren't pushing through Module 3 just because you suddenly fell in love with the subjunctive tense. You're pushing through because Cassandra warned Edward about some international criminal known as the Prince of Thieves. And you desperately want to know what happens next. That narrative tension, that becomes your ultimate motivation. Another very common objection that's addressed directly in the source material is the difficulty level. You might be wondering, okay, is it really A2 to B1? Is this going to be way too easy for me, or is it going to be way too hard? The answer is that the text is meticulously graded specifically for that A2 to B1 level. This means you actually get to grow with the story. Because there's full audio and English support right there, a lower-level A2 learner can easily grasp the plot without frantically flipping through a dictionary every 2 seconds. Meanwhile, an intermediate B1 learner can really stretch their skills, seeing exactly how native speakers seamlessly weave every single tense into a real, flowing narrative. Let's go ahead and tackle the elephant in the room that the creators proactively address, the price tag. You might look at the cost and think, is 97 euros a lot for a language course? Well, just think about what you've spent so far on your language learning journey up to this point. The course is priced at exactly 97 euros. Let's break down the actual logic behind that specific number, straight from their own conversion strategy. When you contextualize it, the value becomes incredibly clear. It is one single payment for life. That 97 euros is cheaper than keeping up 2 months of those premium app subscriptions, and it is definitely cheaper than a single hour sitting with a private language tutor. Plus, you get those 4 bonus workbooks, which are valued at over 40 euros just on their own. And the best part? You keep all of these assets forever. The whole shebang is yours. And hey, if you're still on the fence about it, they offer the ultimate risk reversal. You can actually try the entire system for a full 7 days. If you don't absolutely love the story-based method, or if you somehow don't find yourself hooked on Edward Blake's mystery, you get a full refund. It just takes 1 email, 0 hassle. The risk is entirely on their shoulders, not yours. Now, what really solidifies this for me personally is the pedigree behind the course itself. We aren't just looking at some flashy marketing gimmick here. The source documents make a huge point to highlight honest, verifiable social proof. This method was created by a teacher with 30 years of actual classroom experience and over 400 published books. You are literally in the hands of an absolute expert who understands exactly how the adult brain acquires language. So, what is the absolute best way to see if this method works for your unique brain? The creators have set up a brilliant entry point. You can just start with the completely free Module 1 taster. Sure, it captures your email, but it lets you test drive the entire method absolutely risk-free before you ever commit to that 97 euros. You get to read the start of the story, you get to hear the audio, and you get to see those grammar notes in action for yourself. Which really just leaves us with the ultimate question. Who exactly is the elusive Prince of Thieves? And what in the world is happening inside that mysterious black van at the Livorno Fish Market at 10 p.m.? There is literally only one way to find out. And hey, you might just master Italian along the way. I highly recommend checking out that free Module 1 taster. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep your curiosity sharp, and I'll see you in the next one.